because it feels like the excitement about DeMar DeRozan is going to linger, but the initial pop of like, holy crap, the Kings got DeMar DeRozan is now gone.
Mm-hmm.
And you had reported, and there was rumors that the Kings like, oh, hey, they're still in on Lauri Markkanen. Hey, they're still in on Kyle Kuzma. There's all this. And hey, there might be another move coming. Well, it's now July 15th. We're into Summer League. And it feels like now, hey, maybe that additional move is not coming. And then I saw that Monty McNair said that this is probably the group that they're going to go into camp with. This is the main core of players are going to go into camp with, which means maybe there's some moves on the margins. But for the most part, this is the roster the Kings are looking at. And I got to tell you, man, when I hear that, I don't want to say it bums me out, but it feels like I was so certain there was something else coming after the DeMar DeRozan trade. And that was a great addition. And I think it makes the Kings a playoff team.
Yeah, I think it's a great addition, and I agree with you. It makes them a playoff team. And when you compound that with some of the other moves that, the smaller moves that they've made, whether it's Jalen McDaniels or it's drafting Devin Carter, like all of these things, you kind of sit there and go, okay, we can look at last season and say they barely missed the playoffs, that they had injuries late in the season, and that played a role in them missing the playoffs. You filled some of that issue. But that doesn't change the fact that, number one, you got smaller at the small forward position.
Yep.
And I don't know, maybe DeMar DeRozan doesn't start at the 3. Maybe he starts at the 2, and you just have like a really compacted backcourt. But I'd also you're still missing the same ingredient that you were. Like Jalen McDaniels is long and athletic, and he was perfectly fine a couple of years ago for Charlotte when he's on a bad team and had to take on a bigger scoring role and everything else. And at that point, I would have loved for the Kings to go out and trade for him then. Mm-hmm. And he's still only 26 years old, but we're realistically talking about a guy who is an upgrade from Kessler Edwards, but not a tremendous upgrade from Kessler Edwards. Sure. And, same style of player, but same style of players like Glenn Robinson III. And so you're hoping that he can fill in like a back of the rotation guy, like a 9-10 guy, but I wouldn't put him in the top of my rotation if I were a team that had like high-end playoff aspirations. He's a guy that can play, and he's an upgrade over what you had last year, but he's not someone to put you over the top. And I'm looking at this roster, and, Alex Len has to play. It's not that Alex Len can play. It's at this point, Alex Len has to play.
Yeah,
and he's got to play a lot of games. Like he can't get hurt and play 47 games or something. Like he's going to need to be a player because you don't have another big man. You hope that Trey Lyles can play some 5, but we've also heard that Trey Lyles may end up playing the 4 and the 5, maybe even starting at the 4. Like there's a lot of question marks here about how your roster constructing when it comes to that's still the same issue, the length and athleticism that you still don't have. And so I'm intrigued because if this is it, like it's got to work really well. Like somehow Mike Brown has got to do a really, really good job of like blending this thing together very quickly.
And that's where my hang up is, because the roster feels incomplete. And every roster, I think if we went through the NBA and we could even talk to experts and beat writers and radio guys and TV guys in other markets, and we can talk to those media members, and I'm sure they'll tell you, yeah, the roster is lacking in A, B, and C way. And we're going to do the same thing. But with Sacramento, it like they got better. And I've said that a bajillion times over the last week. They got better. But then as we look and I see that Monty McNair is saying, yeah, this is kind of the group, and we're going to be patient. We're looking at wings and some forwards and some bigs, but this is largely the core that we're going to go into camp with. And Jalen McDaniels can be impactful on both ends of the floor. It's like, man, an optimistic view of the Kings. Sure, you can talk yourself into this is a top 3-4 team in the West. Like, yes, if everything goes right, like you said, hey, Alex Len plays a bunch and is really impactful, and Trey Lyles finds a role as a small ball 5 and a backup 4, and just really turns it on and is lights out from 3 and is pulling down rebounds and doing a great job. Wow, what a player! And Kevin Huerter finds a role. There's all these things that you can talk yourself into, but all I keep coming back to, and all of that is valid, all that's on the table. Maybe everything goes right and they have this magical season, they win 55 games. But everything I come back to is what we talked about all of last season. We did multiple shows around the idea that every problem the Kings have comes back to their lack of size and their lack of athleticism on the wings. And I know they solved some of those problems with DeMar DeRozan, particularly the scoring and the shot creation. Like there are not a lot of players that they could have added that would have helped more than DeMar DeRozan is going to in those two departments. That is without a doubt. But I can't help but sit here and think, man, they are really, really thin in the front court and on the wings again. And if we're gonna lay out that optimistic case, which I'm fine with, if you want to lay out the optimistic case where this is a 55-win team and they're really going to take off this year, I think at the same time you have to lay out the other case where, hey, this team is better, but they're going to run into a lot of the same problems against a lot of the same teams because their roster is thin in a lot of the same areas.